we've done Friday before, Michael. So this is kind of
No.
cool.
Yes.
And we have two really great guests. One I know very well, and another I know a little bit. I've been on a few shows with them before. Our good friend Jason Lavigne is here, and also Chris Dacey of Dacey Media. And kind of the subject of the show is I asked the question: are we burying our heads? Of course, this is a reference to ostriches. They don't actually do that, by the way. I found out. Uh, but before we get to the topic and some really juicy conversation, we've got a few kind of housekeeping things I want to go over. First of all, I want to thank everybody who's been supporting the show. We've had some really great numbers on the Dinesh D'Souza interview that we released last week about the Dragon's Prophecy. If you haven't seen that book that movie yet, you really must download it. And by the way, we had a really great conversation with Dinesh D'Souza for about 45 minutes,
Hmm.
where he talks about the book and other things. So check that out too. We want to thank you all for supporting that. We've had some really great support, especially on YouTube. We have coming out, of course, this week, besides the book, which is available for sale. We have coming out this week an interview with Seamus Bruner, who's an American author of a book called Control Oligarchs, Exposing the Billionaire Class, Their Secret Deals, and the Globalist Plot to Dominate Your Life. It ties into tonight's topic somehow. And there's a lot of, unfortunately, there's a lot of Canadian content in that book and in that conversation. So watch for that coming out. I believe it's going to be released either tonight or tomorrow. Michael can update us on that. And have you seen the new Frankenstein film? This week's commentary addresses the topic, the age-old topic of, what happens when human beings play God through perverse science, and that piece is called "Dangerous Knowledge," and it relates directly to the story of Frankenstein and how a lot of things that are going on right now in the world, people don't realize not just COVID, but there are other examples where science is being used to to do really strange things that would horrify most people. So check that out. That's coming out, I believe, over the weekend. Michael can tell us for sure. I want to also mention kind of some big news. My wife and Jennifer and I are being flown down to Dallas, Texas in early January to be interviewed concerning the launch of Gray Matter on Daystar, which is a huge step for our show, the very big Christian network in the United States and Canada. So we'll tell you more about that. So having said all those things, I'm going to throw it over to Michael. He'll tell you about Buy Me a Coffee and some other important stuff of how you can support the show. Thanks,
Yes.
Michael.
Well, and thank you. And it's wonderful to see Chris and Jason here. Chris and I actually met in Ottawa
Mm.
during the Freedom Rally. 2.5 wonderful weeks until the police messed it up. But like and share, people, like and share. And we appreciate everybody tuning in and sharing this. Sharing is caring, as we learned from the Care Bears all those decades ago, or maybe last year. What, there was that time. But what I would like to say too is, as Leighton was saying, we've got a commentary coming out, and we've got the Seamus Bruner coming out. So that's going to come out over the weekend. You definitely want to get a hold of
It's like a
that.
Black Friday of gray
It
matter
is.
content,
Yeah.
isn't it, Michael?
That's right.
Yeah.
It's a little bit ahead of the holidays, but of course we've got the X platform, which we talked about in the last couple of lives that we do get shadow banned because
Yeah,
of the things that we talk about here.
because we talk about stuff.
Yes. And so our stats have been a little bit better the last couple of
Hmm.
weeks. So maybe the people were listening and said,
Yeah.
"Oh, I guess we better open the taps a little bit for that gray matter fellow. He's getting a little crotchety about our censorship."
Yeah.
The other thing is on Substack, we've got the channels over there, and of course our YouTube. And like Leighton was saying, thank you so much for helping us out with watching our episodes. And hey, if you want to leave a browser tab open and just put it on mute and fill up that queue with Leighton Gray's Gray Matter episodes, well, we would be pleased. Thank you
Mm.
for that. And then, of course, the Buy Me a Coffee, and then the little .com/Gray Matter podcast. if you want to buy some virtual cups of that delicious coffee that you can only get at buymeacoffee.com. So, yes, I'll hand it back to you, Leighton.
Okay,
I'm
thanks,
excited
Michael.
about tonight's conversation. This is
Yeah,
going to be
and we've
good.
got two great guests, and I want to get them talking because really, that's where we're going to get the most bang for our buck, as it were, because these guys know a lot about what's going on with the ostrich situation in British Columbia. They've both been following it pretty closely. I saw a great quote that kind of describes these guys. It says, being a conspiracy theorist is spending endless hours for months and years gathering as much information as possible from as many resources as possible and critically thinking about that, about what that information means, and then having people who do nothing but read headlines tell you you're crazy. That kind of describes Dacey Media and the work that he does, and also Jason Lavigne, all the work that he does with his podcast and everything else. Running for Parliament and God knows what else. So I want to start here. If you wouldn't mind, Michael, do you have that picture of that Chris took?
Oh, the kill zone.
Yes, just put that up, and maybe
Yes.
just as a visual for people. This was a picture. Chris, do you want to tell us when you took that picture and what we're looking at there?
Yeah, so I didn't actually take that picture. That
Okay.
was Sergeant Mike Rood, retired airborne veteran. He's well versed in climbing mountains, and he got that photo and the video from that day. That was the morning after the slaughter. So, I mean, the slaughter took place overnight. Started around 6 o'clock, maybe. Over, I mean, something like 1,000 gunshots rang out through the night, terrorized, screaming people. And Mike went up the mountain and made sure to get this photo and the video that I know I think on my X post has 3.8 million views.
Wow.
But I mean, it has hundreds of millions of views.
Incredible. Wow.
Globally. So he went out and did an incredibly difficult thing to make sure we got this.
Mm-hmm. Chris, this photo reminds me of a famous quotation from a German guy named Heinrich Heine. And he said, where books are burned, in the end, people will be burned too. That quotation is very prescient because he said it in the 19th century. And of course, we all know what ended up happening in Germany when they started burning books and eventually they started burning people. I wonder, does the same apply to ostriches, right? If they're going to kill ostriches, how short of a step it is, to kill people. And I say that just to sort of, people might say, well, Leighton, you're just getting a little crazy here. But it's a short walk. And, but so I just want to frame it that way. But what I'd like to do is maybe start off with Chris, if you wouldn't mind, talk about how you got involved in this ostrich situation. And why you did, and also tell us a little bit about what you saw while you were there, because I know you got to know many of the people there very intimately, and you were covering this story like every single day for a long period of time, and that gave you kind of a unique vantage point on all this, didn't it?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, this has kind of been on my radar for a while. I'm kind of siloed in Ottawa a little bit with what I cover with, politics and the Palestinian protests and all kinds of stuff in Ottawa. But this has been on my radar for a while. And once I saw the RCMP come in and CFIA with their paramilitary enforcement wing come in to this farm, I couldn't believe it, honestly. Like, I've seen a lot of crazy things. I've covered things that I think are impossible and unimaginable. And this to me was beyond the pale. I started covering it and I was hitting I do pretty good. I get some stuff that goes pretty viral, but I was hitting like 5-10 million views a day or impressions a day on ads covering this.
Yeah.
And I've never seen that. And I've never seen the broad attention, even with Convoy. This seemed to be the closest thing or the biggest thing since then. It seemed to be apolitical. People were incredibly interested, and I saw it. I started covering it. The impressions were huge, and I was just like, maybe I need to do this. I'll see if I can do it. I put out a post and said I'd like to go, and 2 days later, I was on a plane. I kind of feel like I was called. Honestly, it was a similar thing that led me into Convoy and has led me through all of it. It's not my path.
Yeah.
It's been put in front of me, but I'm going to pursue it.
Yeah. So you're the boots on the ground guy. Jason, what was your involvement here? I know you've covered a lot of stories like this, especially what happened in Coots and other major stories through your podcast and through your journalism. What was your role in this, and what was your kind of vantage point on the ostrich situation?
I came a little bit later to the game to follow this story, and I came in looking for the evidence. I had several viewers on my show reach out to me to tell me about what was going on. But I also saw two sides to the story developing. Some of my fans and audience were like, "Hey, this is a tragedy. What's going on here with the ostriches is about their herd immunity and science." And then there's another side that was saying this is a bio lab and they're just doing a grift and that kind of stuff. So I looked into both sides. I actually spent a lot of time talking to people from both sides of the equation there, looking into what was going on. And that led me to do several interviews. Some interviews I was turned down for, like CFIA themselves would not provide a spokesperson, but they did respond and deny me. The RCMP wouldn't give me a spokesperson either. They just said the CFIA is in charge. And the CBC had a expert on, Dr. Angela Rasmussen, something
Isn't
like
that an
that.
oxymoron,
Oh,
CBC
man.
and expert? Just kidding.
Well, she's from the University of Saskatchewan, and she was being used as an expert on this subject matter. So
Yeah.
I reached out, tried to do an interview with her, and I was denied. But where I did get success was with biologists and other scientists, including Dr. Stephen Pellich,
Yeah.
Pellick,
Yeah. Brilliant
and
guy.
spoke to Viva Fry, who was covering it quite a bit,
Mm-hmm.
Nicholas Holstrom, and then Katie herself from the
Yeah.
farm. And I was doing
Yeah.
these interviews, directly speaking to them and looking into the court matter. So the federal court decision, the appeals court decision, and the run up to the Supreme Court. So I was looking into
Mm-hmm.
the legal, the reports that the court wasn't looking into. I looked at those,
Mm.
and I was really focusing on the evidence, the science, and the court matter itself to get my information,
So,
along with direct interviews.
Jason, for the people who are watching or listening to this and don't know what the origin story of this is, I wonder if you could tell us. Now, obviously, it has to do with the Canadian Food and Inspection Agency, which is a bureaucratic arm of the federal government, making a decision that these birds had to be destroyed. Now, could you take us through the who, what, where, and the when and the why that decision was made?
That's an excellent, interesting question, actually, Leighton, because there would be a few points in time that you can call the origin story. It goes all the way back to 2008,
Wow,
when
really?
some of the science was being done. 2022, when COVID was kicking around and the government funded some scientific research that involved this farm. And then December 2024, when the CFIA themselves got involved and did a PCR test or two on some dead birds and issued a call order, which kicked off the entire legal process as well. But if we want to be fair to the farm, I think it's probably best to go back to 2022 when Canada was doing a bunch of research to find alternate, uh, not so much medication, but treatments for COVID and ways to prevent it. They
Right.
spent $15 million with a company out of Quebec called Immune Biosolutions,
Of course, the
which was
company out of
doing.
Quebec got the contract.
Yep. So, well, here's the thing. That particular lab was doing research on prevention for COVID. This was pre-vaccines. So
Right.
this was prevention for COVID. And they were working with this farm to
Mm,
see if there was antibody research that could be done on the spike protein. And it
right.
turns out there was some excellent research results coming out of this farm when it came to whether or not these ostriches can create antibodies for COVID-19 itself to assist with the capture of COVID-19 through respiration devices like a mask.
Right.
When this research was good, it was looking promising. The lab in Quebec got purchased. We don't know by who, and the program got shut down. And then after that is when CFIA got involved, December 2024. They went in and there was two birds that died, and they did a test. Well, they claimed to do a test, and we can get into those details. Came back and said that they have avian flu, so H5N1, and issued a call order December 31st 2024 to take out the entire herd through a stamp out policy that they had. Next step on this one, Leighton, was the CFIA provided information about exemptions for genetic value, if they have a genetic value, and there could be an exemption for them. The farm filed for that, provided a bunch of science and information and history and documents on the flock, and the CFIA declined it. They denied it without appeal. They did not allow any appeal. It was a final decision. There was no way to challenge it. Then that kicked off the federal court matter, which was a judicial review solely on the authority by the CFIA to issue the call order. Nothing about the merits or science, just whether or not they had statutory authority to issue the call order. Federal court upheld that authority. The Federal Court of Appeals upheld that decision. And then ultimately, the Supreme Court of Canada declined hearing the appeal on the authority of the CFIA to go ahead and issue an order to call the whole flock.
Yeah, because the Supreme Court has never heard any case even resembling COVID. And of course, without exception, they're too busy creating new rights for all kinds of strange people and ideas, and destroying mandatory minimums for sex offenders and things of that nature. That's a very interesting summary, Jason. I thank you for it. And just as a sort of a corollary to that, this gets a little bit technical, but this concept of judicial review is a very useful one for bureaucrats, because what they do, Jason's right, they set up these statutes, these laws, so that you can't appeal their decisions. All you can do is take that decision before what's called a court for a judicial review. And this is a very narrow, restrictive window through which a judge looks at what a bureaucrat or a bureaucratic board did, like the CFIA, and it looks at through a very narrow lens, like, did they have the statutory authority to do what they did? And what that does is it creates a situation where great injustice can be done, because, as Jason pointed out, even though you had outstanding, brilliant scientists like Dr. Stephen Pellick and Dr. Byron Bridle, these are Nobel Prize level scientists who are geniuses in the realm of virology and genetics and things of immunology and things of that nature. A court cannot look at that because of the way the law is structured. And that's a really big problem, which we're going to talk more about, because it applies. It's eerily familiar, isn't it, for those of us who lived through COVID, and it's a really big problem. I want to come back to these animals, though. I did a little bit of research on ostriches, by the way. Turns out they're the heaviest and largest living birds, with adult common ostriches weighing anywhere between 63.5 and 145 kilograms. That's a really big bird. As big as almost as the one on Sesame Street. And they lay the largest eggs of any living animal, with the ability to run at 70 kilometers per hour. That's 43.5 miles per hour. I believe at one time they were the second fastest land animal next to the cheetah, and they're the fastest birds on land. They're farmed worldwide with significant industries in the Philippines and in Namibia. South Africa produces about 70% of global ostrich products, with the industry largely centered around this town in Oudtshoorn. Now, why do people farm ostriches? This question got asked for me too. Well, it turns out ostrich leather is a very lucrative commodity, and the large feathers are used as plumes for the decoration of ceremonial headgear. But ostrich eggs and meat have been used by humans for millennia. That's millennia. And ostrich oil is another product that is made using ostrich fat and has all kinds of health benefits. And these animals, they can live. They have a medium lifespan of about 10 years, and the size of these eggs are huge, and these eggs as well are very important. Have very important scientific value. This is part of the story that people don't know about, and isn't talked about. But these animals that were destroyed in that picture, these are very valuable living creatures that could have been studied, that we could have learned a lot about, and through that study, we could have perhaps saved a lot of human lives. But I want to come back to you, Chris, because your involvement in this story I think is very fascinating to people because you got to live amongst the people who were living through this.
Yeah.
And I watched some of the video and stuff that you posted, and tell me if this is wrong. It started to have the look and feel of what it was like at the Freedom Convoy, and what I mean is like towards the end when it sort of got paramilitary, that this became kind of
Yeah.
it became kind of a scary situation, didn't it?
Yeah. I mean, it was paramilitary when I arrived, I would say. Once the CFIA came in with the RCMP, I mean, there was 30 or 40 units on each shift, 12-hour shifts, which were actually 60-hour shifts with 2 hours of travel. Um, they'd roll in. I mean, they had tactical people, they had, a command post, they had drone operators, multiple drone operators. I honestly have not seen a paramilitary operation. A paramilitary is the exact way and the right way to put it.
Mm,
It was honestly shocking. And this is very different from the convoy. This isn't a protest.
right.
This is a family farm that has been seized and taken over. They also took over two adjacent properties, and the entire RCMP operation was basically around and using an adjacent property that is unrelated to this.
Hmm.
And they were flying drones, they were circling them, they were terrorizing these people.
They saw
Um,
this as a
it,
protest, didn't they, Chris? The CFIA.
uh, yeah, I mean that's what they called it,
Right.
but it was never a protest, right? It
No.
was it was farmers trying to save their birds.
Yeah.
Nothing here was a protest. No one was protesting,
Yeah.
really.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
not in the sense that I know. I mean, I've covered protests for over 3 years now, and I
Yeah.
know what protests look like. And this is not what that was. And I mean, the RCMP presence here, there's a lot of layers to this, but I think a lot of the frustration from the RCMP was the fact that they were brought in under a warrant from CFIA that they didn't really understand. I have it's a lot of video that's not out yet, and that will be coming. But
Right.
I've talked to RCMP officers who said we don't understand this warrant. We've never seen a warrant to search where we seize a property and there's a person inside a dwelling inside it, and we have to monitor them and harass them.
Right.
So a lot of
Wow.
the frustration, I think, came from the fact, and I mean the RCMP were the front face of this, right?
Hmm.
So I didn't come out here to fight the RCMP, but that's who was in my face.
Yeah, and I read that the RCMP locked out supporters. They blocked the road. They
Yeah.
locked supporters out on the highway without vehicles, without their campers, without
Without their
any,
pets,
yeah,
without
without anything
medication.
they needed. Yeah, and they were stranded out there for hours, right? And then they
Yeah,
had to
yeah,
listen to
as a
this rapid
thousand
gunfire
bullets.
of animals.
Yeah,
Yeah, being killed. It must have been, I mean,
I
psychologically,
mean it was.
emotionally traumatizing for people.
I mean, I've seen a lot of pretty crazy things. I mean, I was at the convoy as they popped smoke on Wellington Street and came through, like move and shot Alexa and all this stuff, and this to me was beyond the pale.
Wow.
There was no warning. The gunfire just started going off in the night, and as it did, people were collapsing to their knees, screaming
Yeah.
hysterically,
Yeah.
like screaming. And I can handle the gunfire. I could kind of handle all of it, but that human aspect, when I saw, a family member drop to their knees, screaming in terror, like those screams are gonna be embedded in my brain forever.
Right. And of course, to a lot of people, this is really strange. I mean, that our government could treat Canadians this way, and I want to talk about this in maybe broader strokes. One of the good things that has come out of this, if there can be a silver lining, is the level of awareness. Now, this made it all the way up to the Trump administration, and RFK Jr. It sort of tried to intervene, and I think they actually contacted the Canadian government and said, "Hey, listen, we think you guys should seriously consider studying these animals instead of destroying them." Of course, that was swept aside. They wouldn't listen. The elbows were up, as it were. But even in a leftist publication like The Atlantic, there was a piece that I read. It's entitled "Who Would Want to Kill 314 Ostriches? how the plight of a few hundred birds in Canada became an all-out fight for freedom. And I found, wow, that was really amazing to see that in the Atlantic, this piece that was published on November the 12th. And very, very sympathetic to the people who are living through this. And so that might be a sign, that might be a cause for optimism. What do you think about that, Jason? Do you think that at the very least, if we can put a silver lining on this, that the destruction of these animals and what was done to the people who own them and raise them, that might raise national and international awareness about what the CFIA and other government agencies are doing to Canadians?
I would absolutely hope so. So if we can actually get something good out of this, it would be some reform around that. Starting with the fact that there is no appeal process on a bureaucracy level, that agencies can go ahead and create a decision for whatever reason, and there's no requirement that they have to even listen to the science or listen to the property owners. They can just make a decision with no appeal. Right there, I think there needs to be some reform. I also think there needs to be a reform around how you go to the federal court and how we do judicial reviews. You should be able to introduce new evidence. This was specifically denied by the federal court. They wouldn't actually see any of the evidence. All they wanted to see was the statute, who issued it, and whether or not that statute applied and had the authority. The Supreme Court, when they issued the stay, I'd like to see reform there because they actually put the custody in CFIA when it should have went back to the original property owner until a decision was made. That certainly would have alleviated some of the harm and suffering for both the farm and the animals during that period of time, which took about 6 weeks for the Supreme Court. Although that's quick for the Supreme Court, that's forever when you're living on the farm, worried about your
Yeah,
animals. So
yeah,
that stay should have put the custody back to the farm until a decision was made. And then the bigger picture here, this is a property rights issue.
yeah,
Whether or not your government can seize and destroy
yeah,
your property based off of anything they say they want to do. This wasn't based on scientific
yeah,
evidence. This wasn't based on an inquiry that looked into it. This was simply a decision made by the CFIA, and they went ahead and called these animals. I also want to see some reform about how media covers it, because media did not provide the information to the public that there were exceptions available. This wasn't a required call. There was a
yeah.
bunch of science and reasons to go ahead and let these birds live. That was completely ignored by the media as well. And had they done that job, then maybe the pressure from the public would have been a lot higher. Maybe politicians would have stepped forward and had a louder voice on this issue. But we saw a lot of calming down of the public through misinformation from the mainstream media, and CFIA not giving interviews and not providing spokespersons to media also caused some part of the problem because there's a lot of confusion. So I'd like to see a lot of those reforms happen. But at the end of the day, whether you like ostriches or not, this is a property rights issue. Can the government decide to take away your property, seize it, and destroy it without recourse, appeals? I don't like that at all. So I
Yeah.
hope
Um,
this will turn into some sort of reforms.
You raised a
maybe I
really,
can hit
yeah.
on that.
Go ahead. Go
Maybe
ahead,
I can
please.
hit on that property rights thing a little
Yeah.
bit.
Yeah.
So yes, there is the major issue, and this seems to be an apolitical kind of thing. There's people that normally hate me on the internet that are coming out and supporting me right now about this, so it's a little strange. But what happened at the farm and what they did to Universal Ostrich Farms and the culling and all of that is egregious and it's disgusting and it probably shouldn't have happened. But what they did to the adjacent property here, to the garlic farm, I did about an hour of video walking through that property yesterday with Allie, the garlic girl, and looking at how they destroyed that property, talking about her perspective. They are family, but they're a completely unrelated adjacent property, separately owned property. They were
Yeah.
never part of the quarantine, and that property was seized once this operation began, basically for logistical purposes. But they surrounded that property, destroyed it, and terrorized the family in there while they did it. And I mean, I have a lot of video to corroborate this. Much of the video I have is not out yet. We will get there. But some of the stuff that was done there is I mean, it's beyond the pale. It's so damning. What they did to that family, to me, I mean, what they did to this farm is unconscionable. What they did to that family was an escalating terror campaign. The RCMP, in my opinion, came at that family. They tried to get to me. The people needed somebody to do something wrong here. They wanted to make people snap, and they attacked that family to try to make that happen.
Oh,
While they surrounded and seized their
Yeah.
property and chased them with drones. And I mean, I don't even know.
It's pretty clear that the Canadian government was not interested in the science here. There was a letter I mentioned earlier that was sent by Robert F. Kennedy Jr., where he said, "We are respectfully requesting CFIA to consider not culling the entire flock of ostriches at Universal Ostrich Farm," it said. And the reason why was, and he had the full support of the FDA commissioner, Marty Makary, and the National Institutes of Health director, Dr. Jay Bhattacharya. So those are the two most important health bureaucrats, arguably in the entire world. And then, of course, RFK Jr., who is the head of the HHS in the United States. So if the Canadian government were really interested in science, it seems to me that they would have heeded that request. But they're not interested in science. They're interested in doing other things. And that's where I want to take this conversation, because, you know, I think, and I want to get your take on this, Chris, as well as you, Jason. And it seems to me that what happened during COVID-19 was a great shock to the Canadian public, or at least to many of us. I can say personally, I didn't think that the things that happened during the COVID-19 pandemic and subsequently could happen in Canada. But what happened during the COVID-19 pandemic is that we began to see that our government had no respect for us, no regard for property rights, really no regard for our health and safety, and that they were tyrannizing us. And part of the consequence of not a single government in this country holding the people who did those things, those atrocities that were committed during the COVID-19 pandemic, part of the consequence for that is that they got away with it. And when people like the CFIA, people who work in CFIA, who are very much like the people who worked at AHS and in health officials, bureaucrats in other provinces during COVID-19, when they get away with this stuff, that gives them confidence to keep doing it. And I'm interested to get your take on this, guys, because I see what happened there at the ostrich farm as kind of a progression from what happened during COVID. And for example, you could take the Freedom Convoy and the way that was put down. You can look at this ostrich situation, see the flexing of the muscle and the confidence that, you know, there's really no reckoning, that no court is going to hold them to account. No government is going to do it. No politician certainly is going to do it. And I wonder if you agree with me that this ostrich situation probably could not have happened prior to COVID, but since COVID happened, really, you know, we're almost should expect these type of situations to happen. What do you think about that, Chris?
Yeah, I think that I mean, I've watched for like since I became, I mean, I'm just a carpenter from the Ottawa Valley who lived in downtown Ottawa, and I got
Don't say
thrust
just a
into
carpenter.
it.
You know, Jesus was
Yeah,
just a
yeah. I
carpenter.
mean, I'm just a man, right? Whatever. You know what I mean? But right, like I'm not I wasn't planning to be a journalist. I wasn't trying to do that. I lived in downtown Ottawa, and the convoy came and it surrounded me. And when they got beat out of the streets, I was still there. And that's kind of how I got into this. And to me, that was all impossible.
Yeah.
Like everything that happened was impossible. Like I grew up in Canada. I'm not anti-law enforcement. I'm not anti-government, or I wasn't. I believed our institutions were built on things that mattered from great people who did incredible work building these institutions.
Yeah.
And what I witnessed in Ottawa was unimaginable. What happened afterwards with zero accountability. I mean, the thing was declared unconstitutional, ultra virulent, whatever. You guys are the lawyers, but it was declared all kinds of things. There was zero accountability. And from my perspective, things have just got steadily worse since. And
I agree.
You know, to see what's happening here is, I've seen a lot of things. I cover like some of the craziest things. I basically cover like the internet manifest in real life.
Yeah.
And this to me is beyond the pale. I don't even really know how to describe it. I'm trying to come to terms with it. I'm trying to understand what I've seen here, but this is not. If this is Canada, it's not the Canada I thought I grew up in. It's not the Canada I knew. It's not Canada.
Yeah. It's almost like a like the Wizard of Oz, there's a guy behind the screen
Well,
on a
and the
megaphone,
gaslighting aspect of it is super intense, right? It's like
Yeah.
don't believe your lying eyes. Like I
Yeah.
listened to 1,000 gunshots ring out in the night. I
Yeah.
listened to the screams. I saw the aftermath. I saw what the RCMP did here, and I mean, especially going into the end. I mean, I had a PLT officer come after me. I had them come and threaten me with arrest for covering this.
Yeah.
Like, what the hell is going on here?
Yeah. These are really noble animals, it's not like you were putting down a bunch of rats. These are really noble animals. They're valuable animals. They have social interactions with each other. They live in communities. Jason,
It's
there's a famous.
obvious they have real personalities. Like they have real personalities. I saw them, and these are ancient animals.
Yeah.
With developed immune systems that are important.
Yeah.
And these eggs carry far more antibodies than they do research on small mammals and whatnot.
Yeah.
One of these eggs, I think in theory, I'm not a scientist, but carries a huge number of antibodies.
I think Dr. Pellick said that, didn't he? That was part of his opinion.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the fact that so normally when, if this went through a chicken barn, it might kill 80% of the animals.
Right.
Something like 15% of these birds died. And it was some of the younger ones, maybe, that didn't have quite as developed immune system. I don't think it's even confirmed that it was H1 and whatever.
Yeah.
They said it was high pathogen. I don't think that was ever confirmed from anyone. And these birds survived. So not only did they have a robust immunity to begin with, but then they should have a herd immunity now. And that should matter.
Yeah. Yeah, they're metaphorically, they're almost like the unvaccinated during COVID.
Yeah.
No one studied us. They should be studying us to find out why we didn't need the vaccines.
So
Jason,
Leighton,
yeah.
Oh, just before we go to Jason, I interrupted this delightful conversation to say that Wes has a couple of great comments.
Okay.
Towards Jason. So I wanted to say that before I forget. Jason, I don't know if you can see the public chat on the side of your screen in Riverside, but if nothing else, you'll want to go to the Facebook later.
Well, why don't you read them for Jason? Then he can provide some feedback and.
Oh, sure.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, so Wes said, comment to Jason Lavigne, Supreme Court revision, change the Senate to the Chamber of Sober Second Thought of the Chamber of Constitutional Review and dissolve the current Senate and replace it with a mix of judicial bodies, as outlined in Wes's book. Actually, here, I can just put this in. And this way, the Supreme Court issues can be fast-tracked without the hoops to jump through. And then there's just some more about that.
That's
being
a great
solution.
suggestion for a new and independent Alberta.
Yeah, it is.
Constitution. And Jason's going to be holding something of a constitutional conference on that in January. We'll get him to talk about that.
What I do is I'll kind of follow up with the question that you had before, Leighton.
Yeah.
Because I think what we're seeing here from a legal standpoint is a weaponization of our legal system against dissident. And what we saw in the convoy is that things like people were charged, prosecuted, convicted, sentenced, and now going through things like losing their truck. There's lawsuits of $300 million against several of the participants in the convoy. So they're going after them civilly, trying to destroy them completely.
Like a lawfare,
and, And for sure the lawfare, but what I'm more worried about is the ripple effect that came out of that. So fundraising was attacked during that one.
Yes.
Now it's very difficult to do fundraising. Canadians are very generous normally, but now they're also very scared that if they associate themselves with any dissident type of fundraising, their bank accounts will be frozen, they will lose their jobs, they'll be outed by the CBC. We saw all of this with the COVID thing. Now, overlapping that with what we saw here in BC, I'm very, very concerned now that farmers will no longer resist, because what we saw here is a massive process that was used against this particular farm. And one of the most devastating lines in the Supreme Court denial is with costs. So the costs
Yeah.
go to the farm. They're going to have to pay all the legal all the way up to the Supreme Court.
Yeah.
We also understand that the CFIA is going to be sending costs for all of the treatment that they did there, including the cull itself. For example, the bale of hay that you see there in that picture, those were all ordered in their name, the farm's name. So they didn't even actually technically order it, but the RCMP put their name down on the order.
Wow.
So they're responsible for that. Yeah,
Yeah.
those bales right there. So Katie's name was put on there. She didn't actually order it, but the bill's going to her. So the cost to the farmers are going to be devastating. Even if there's
Yeah.
compensation for the loss of these birds, the cost of the legal, the culling, the captivity, the
I-
process, they're going to be on the hook for that.
Yeah.
And here's where I'm really concerned about that is the ripple effect. So as the CFA goes across Canada now, they're going to be going to farms and say, okay, here's an order, and good luck trying to fight it. Look what happened all the way to the Supreme Court. So there'll be no resistance. They're just going to go ahead and let them, without testing even, remove these animals from the system. We're
Mhm.
seeing this with 200 head of cattle recently, sheep. We're now seeing it with peacocks in BC as well. They're not going to stop. So my concern here, Leighton, is the ripple effect.
Yeah.
Who's going to resist now? Who's going to do
Yeah.
a protest
they-
in Ottawa? Nobody. Who's
Yeah.
going to fundraise millions of dollars to fight the government? Nobody. And now
Yeah.
who's going to, as a farmer, protest and fight against this and resist this when it comes to their farm? Nobody. They kind of set the precedence now that
Mhm.
they will make the process of punishment. And now I'll close on this last one. The call itself was inhumane. They have processes in the CFIA how to humanely dispose of ostriches. It requires corralling them, getting on top of them, and then injecting them and euthanizing them to a humane way. The way they did it here was a punishment to the animals, to the farm, and to Canadians that want to resist. They did not have to do this. They did not have to shoot them the way they did.
Yeah. It
Animal
was
Justice,
reminiscent
an
of
organization here in
yeah.
Canada, has filed paperwork to fight exactly that part of
Yeah.
this, the call itself. It was
Mhm.
very inhumane. And I think that was a message to Canadians, farmers all across this country. Don't resist.
Yeah. Or else. Yeah. That shooting it reminded me of the scene in Schindler's List when Amon Goth has his rifle out and he's just shooting people indiscriminately in the work camp.
It's,
And of course, there's the property issue. You're bang on there. Of course, our property rights are supposed to be protected constitutionally under Section 7 of the Charter, and also long history of protection of private property in the common law going back over a millennium, actually, to King Alfred and his laws of England that really formed the foundation of the common law back in the 9th century. We've had this concept of private property. And of course, it goes much further back than that. If you look at texts like the Bible in the Old Testament, where, if you could take a view of the Ten Commandments, for example, and you can see property rights enshrined even in the Ten Commandments. So that's going back now thousands of years. What is thou shalt not covet? What is thou shalt not steal? Even thou shalt not kill puts a property value in a human life. And of course, our whole system of laws is built upon this concept of private property. Even our criminal law, if you look honestly at the Criminal Code of Canada, most of the laws that are there, most of the quote unquote crimes are based upon either explicitly or implicitly on recognition of property rights. Break and entry, robbery, theft, even assault. The assault is the application of force without somebody's consent. In other words, the right of your fist ends where my nose begins. That puts a property right in the human body. And this is being destroyed legally, not only in this case, but also if you think of the Cowichan ruling and how it's destroying people's rights to own land. This is really important. One further implication, I want to get you guys to comment on this, and people don't think about this, is that now nearly 1/4 of consumer goods firms are preparing to leave Canada. And this is from an industry CEO. He warned Parliament. There's a standing committee on industry and technology heard stark testimony just last week that rising costs and stalled investment are pushing companies out of the Canadian market. He's talking about food companies. They see the destruction of
Not
of the
surprising.
concept of private property, and a lot of these companies that provide the goods that you buy on your shelves, that you order through Amazon, these companies are going to pull out of Canada because they're seeing that our government does not value private property, and they're frankly worried. They're worried that their property, that their goods are going to be seized, and also the cost of doing business in Canada is becoming so obscenely, ridiculously expensive, that they can't provide goods and services and that Canadians need. So I think, this idea of private property is one that you guys have talked about, and it's a huge one. And really, where we come back to is, it reminds me of this quotation from Thomas Jefferson, who said, "The issue today is the same as has been throughout all history, and that is whether mankind shall be allowed to govern themselves or be ruled by a small elite." That's really what seems to be happening right now in Canada, doesn't it, Chris?
Yeah, yeah, definitely. And I mean, Jason, you hit on a couple of things there. Like, people are terrified. They're terrified to support me. They're terrified to support the farm. We know that bank accounts are still being shut down. I think Eva Chepiak maybe recently got into some trouble. She's a lawyer. They use various excuses, right? But they will shut you down. And if a bank shuts you down, what do? I mean, if the government comes in and declares you some sort of threat, what are you supposed to do about that? And I mean, that's an understandable fear, right? They are making sure not only are they terrorizing citizens, they're taking over farms, they're taking over private property. The CFIA, like, they are not about protection. They operate on a scorched earth policy.
Right.
They come in and all they do is kill. They kill everything. It doesn't take any type of proof. I mean, it's kind of like a Salem witch trial kind of thing. If your neighbor has a problem with you, they can make an anonymous claim, and the CFIA can come over, seize your land, kill your animals, destroy your life, scorch the earth, and then just move on. It's terrifying, honestly. And I've been dealing with this stuff for a long time, and what I'm seeing here is, it's rattled me to my core.
One other aspect of this, Jason, I want to get you to comment on, because when you ran in the as a candidate in the most recent federal election back in April, and one of the things that you talked about a lot was Canadian families, supporting families, protecting all life. Your platform included COVID accountability, making Alberta a energy superpower. But a lot of your campaigning was focusing on families, and you're a family man. This attack on this particular ostrich farm was not just an attack on a business. It wasn't just an attack on animals. It was also an attack on a family. This is a family business. And of course, farming traditionally in Canada, as you know, has been a family endeavor. And so there's that aspect to it too, isn't there? That we should be concerned about, this attack on the family. It's interesting how this ostrich case, it really hits on so many different levels, doesn't it?
Yeah, I actually agree with that, and I'm going to expand a bit more on that. What I'm going to do is kind of just back up just a little bit. Your analogy about the unvaccinated being targeted during COVID. This farm situation is more like a long-term care facility having COVID go through it, and then
Right.
9 months later you kill the survivors, because that's what happened
Wow.
here. If there was a
That's dark.
virus that went through, it took whatever it did at that time, but 9 months later you take out the survivors of that particular situation. And when you're talking about small farms and families, and this is a big issue here in Alberta, for sure, this is why the Brazeau County Agricultural Services Board invited me to come speak to them before the call happened and provide to them the research and the interviews that I was doing. And they ended up issuing a letter to Danielle Smith and to the CFIA and Prime Minister Carney, asking them to reconsider the call, because farmers in Alberta were getting concerned too, that if an agency can go ahead and just place an order without any evidence and appeal, that they too will be targeted. And when you're talking about small farms, you're talking about families, generational, they pass them down. And recently, I would say over the last 20 years, you can tell that government's been going after the small farms,
Yes.
whether it was supply management, it was the fertilizer issue, it was water management.
Yeah.
They're going after small farms.
There's
And
more bad
recently,
stuff, by the way, in their most recent budget for farmers. Yeah.
correct. And you also saw this with this Senate Bill 293, which
Yeah.
was the pandemic preparedness bill, which would literally take over the entire food supply and farms. But even more recently, the cloning of the meat issue. So I
Yeah.
had Dr. Sylvian on our show, Dr. Sylvian Chabois, and he was very blunt that what this is going to end up doing is destroy the small farm, and it's going to turn it into industrial farming
Yeah.
because the GMO, or the genetically modified cattle, are going to be patented, owned by certain organizations, and they will not sell to small farms. They're going to sell to large ones, and they're going to price out the small farms. And he was actually a little flippant that, well, small farms are coming to an end anyway, so let's just hurry it up. But when you're talking about families, you're talking about small farms run by families. So
Yeah.
what are we talking about? We're talking about bankrupting families all over Canada because
Mhm.
they've been doing this for generations and unable
Yeah.
to pass it on. So we're seeing this happen in many different fronts, Leighton. And I definitely think that Edgewood, BC was a fork in the road. And unfortunately, we lost that battle.
Yeah.
So I do hope that farmers do stand up, start to recognize this. We've been warning them for a while, but I think they're starting to wake up that they really don't have rights to continue to prosper with their family and pass it on generationally. They're coming after the farms, and
Yeah.
they're coming
Well-
after your livelihood
Yeah.
for sure.
Lost the battle, but I don't think we necessarily lost the war, right? Like what happened here has snapped people into awareness. I mean, people from
Yeah.
all scopes are coming into this. I mean, there's like the small 10% of haters who hate
Yeah.
me, so they hate this, or ideologues. But I mean, I have people that should be my enemy messaging me and thanking me, and I've never had that before.
Amazing. Wow.
Well, no farmers, no food, and people do understand the
Yeah.
consequences.
Yeah,
of
really.
that.
Yeah,
Hey,
really.
Can I
And
speak to
speaking
that?
of,
Oh.
Go ahead.
sorry,
Michael.
go ahead.
Oh yeah. So about the dairy and the cattle industry. So 60% of the milk, I believe, someone could check my figures on this. It used to be 70, but of the milk that is milked in Canada, I think about 60% now actually goes into industry, doesn't go into the human food chain. And also about the beef, we can clone the meat, but every part of the cow or the steer heifer is actually used. So of course the meat goes into the human food chain, but the hide and the bones and the blood and the rest of the cow goes to industry. So if they're going to clone meat, that's one thing, but they're still going to need cattle for those industrial inputs. Or, you know, maybe there's
Did they not back down off of that? So, like, I mean, public pressure and maybe what was going on here, I think they've backed down off of at least not labeling the cloned meat. Maybe.
I can speak to that.
Yeah. Go
So
ahead. Jason.
what they said now is they're actually going to go through some testing and review because they actually admitted that they didn't actually test the safety of the meat. And then the
Yeah.
labeling question, they got pushed back on that. But what I want to identify here, which is far more important, I think, than the cloning and the labeling, is this is an industrial way of making sure that the farmers go bankrupt because this
Yeah.
cloned meat is expected to be cheaper, and they are expecting the consumers to pick the cheaper meat. And with a label or not, they're expecting consumers to switch to this cloned meat,
And
which
they will.
means farm fresh is going to be off the table, and they're no longer going to be able to support their industry. And it's a two-prong approach, though. So first, in the consumer side, in a grocery store decision, but also on whether or not you can grow cattle. It's going to be far more expensive for farmers to grow natural cattle compared to the clone cattle. The clone cattle will be about half the price, but they're not going to have access to it. So it's not like my neighbor farmer who currently does natural cattle can just go to Monsanto or wherever else they're doing this and buy the cattle. They'll be priced out, not just because they won't sell to them, but because they won't even have the supply. They're going to be focused on the industrial side and the mass farms or large farms. Because the purpose of
And-
this is to consolidate farms
The
under a few
profit,
names.
the profit incentives matter, right?
Yeah.
Like the cost. If something's cheaper, I'm, you know, and I have no money, I'm good to buy that cheaper option if it's going to keep me alive. But
Yeah.
that doesn't
Yeah,
make it
see,
okay.
It's the Amazon model, right? Amazon got rid of
Yeah.
small bookstores by consolidating and making it easier. And then when small bookstores were gone, they just raised their prices and started making a profit.
Yeah.
This is what they're
Yeah.
going to do. They're going to
Then they
make the
own it
beef
all.
cheaper.
They own it all, and they can set the price. They can do whatever they want.
Right. They control it.
Correct.
And
And the
then
Supreme Court of Canada has already supported the GMO of plants. So there was a case out of Saskatchewan where some of the
right.
Terrifying.
plants blew into his field and he ended up having to pay for it because it was a patent infringement. The Supreme Court decided already for the GMO patent holders. So they'll be able to use that law for any beef market and control of that market.
Yeah. It really is shocking when you see some of this, but I think when you dig
And when
deeper,
I asked flat out to Dr. Chabot, what problem are they solving with this? Because usually there's a problem
Yeah.
and a solution
Right.
normally in a free market.
well,
I
in
asked him,
science,
what problem are they solving here? And he actually admitted there is no problem. So they're just introducing it. And I said, well, the
The
effect is going to
manufactured
be,
issue.
the effect's going to be, you're going to be killing small farms. And you're like, yeah, you know,
On purpose, though. It's like, this isn't, I accidentally killed small farms or took out the
Right.
Canadian business owner or the farmer. I mean, this is by design.
Yeah.
Take control of food production, take control of distribution, take control of everything. I mean,
it's
this
deeper than
is
that.
communism 101.
I think it's
yeah, and
deeper
one
than that
step of
because
this is to raise the beef prices so high
right.
that the farmers actually don't mind because they're making a killing right now. When I'm talking to my neighbors, they're like, actually, we're doing great. Our bank accounts are filling up.
Yeah.
For now, you're going to be priced out soon enough. So they're not paying.
That
enough
happens
attention.
too with the with the culling of, say, like a giant chicken farm. Chickens have, like, I don't know what it is, like a 30-week life cycle or whatever, 38-week
Mm-hmm.
kind of thing. You can kill 10,000 chickens and they go in and it's gruesome and it's disgusting. And in fact, Mike and I are going to go start trying to cover some of these other culls that are going on when we leave here. But what they do is they provide them enough money that these farms that they come in and kill everything, that they make money. So it's okay with those farms.
Yeah.
But this is a very different situation here. I mean, it's different with cattle. It depends. Like, every situation is different.
Yeah.
But these aren't a bunch of chickens. Some of these animals are over 35 years old.
Yeah.
I mean, I have pictures with the garlic girl next door when she was a baby and with a baby ostrich. And that ostrich was alive until the other day when they shot and killed it.
Yeah.
And she had to hear that. And I had to hear her screams echoing through the night as I witnessed this slaughter.
Yeah.
Well, Chris, let me give you a detail
What do you
that I
do with
learned on
that?
Monday.
What do you do with that?
Yeah.
Yeah, let me give you a detail I learned on Monday from Dr. David Speaker. In 2010, this farm had avian flu go through it. And this was before the 2012 stamping out policies were in place. So there was no stamping out. So in 2010, this farm had avian flu go through it. This is why all the older ostriches did not die when avian flu may have came through there. It was the younger ones
They had
that were
robust immune systems.
correct. So what this showed was they developed immunity in 2010, and this is why they survived it in 2024. It was all the younger ones that were not around or alive in 2010 that ended up suffering. So these
there's some other angles too that came in here. Like, I've been here. The footage that came, like that aerial, a lot of the high up in the mountain footage came from Sergeant Mike Rood, who is a Canadian airborne veteran. He was the methylquin poison. So the Canadian government experimented basically on Canadian soldiers. They gave them this drug called methylquin. It poisoned a ton of them. It's the reason the airborne got disbanded. And what's going on here could provide an alternative to the things that poison these people that I care about.
Right.
And it's all being shut down. It's all being, we tried to go to the Legion, me and Mike. Mike carries around a guitar called The Sound of Remembrance. It's called Journey. Has the names of 158 fallen from Afghanistan. There's a giant banner in the back of his truck. And we tried to go to the Legion here. Mike had been trying to talk to them for weeks, just to display the banner. And we tried to go in there. They had a meeting with the PLT officers here from the RCMP. They kicked us out, like kicked me, Mike, and his service dog out of the friggin' Legion. I don't know if a single one of them are veteran.
Wow.
Like, there's so many levels to this, and this could save some of these guys that I love and care about. You know, it could save these people from being poisoned.
Yeah, yeah. You know, one of the things that strikes me about the attack on these family farms is that when you attack family farms, you also attack family values,
Mm.
and a lot of times those family values are what we used to call Canadian values. They're largely Christian values. You know, the putting family faith and freedom, for example, and also the independence of the family farm. It basically operates as its own economy. They're not reliant on government. They can grow their own food to feed themselves. They can trade with their neighbors. You know, they don't need government. But part of this sort of jackboot on the neck of farmers is to draw them into submission so that they too become dependent on government. It seems like this liberal government in Ottawa is hell bent on making everyone dependent on the government uh, for daily sustenance,
Well,
and of course destroying all the values that made this country free, made us really the envy of the world in a lot of ways. And so, you know, again, this situation, it hits on so many of the problems that are facing Canada, um, and Canadians, but also it also brings to mind, um, or I should say, it challenges us to think about solutions to these problems because maybe we were sleepwalking before. Maybe we didn't think something like this could happen. Well, it did happen, and it's going to happen again unless we do something, to change and to stop it. Um, I'd like to turn it over to you guys for some final thoughts. Jason, what do you have some final thoughts and perspective on this conversation?
Well, I think that we have to continue to have conversations and find meaningful ways to move forward. Running on municipal level, provincial level, and federal level is one way to do it. Getting out there and having a say, like tomorrow, we're expecting a bunch of farmers in Drayton Valley, Edmonton, all over Canada to get together to have
no.
conversations about
Oh,
this and
great,
show their support. So we
great.
definitely are going to see some of that happening. You mentioned my event in January. It's going to be about foundational truth and fundamental truth. We're going to get back to the grassroots issues here and what can we do with government as it stands today, or how do we change it in a way that is for the people and by the people. We do have to continue to fight. I don't think you take a knee to the government when they come and crack down hard with resistors and dissidents, and if you're a farmer, you got to get that boot off your neck and
Yeah,
stand up a little bit stronger. We're seeing this across the world, so all over the place farmers are waking up to this and fighting back, and this is a nonpartisan issue. Everybody eats. Everybody wants to live, and everybody is upset when you see cruelty happening to animals, to farmers, to people. So this is a
hmm,
nonpartisan issue. So we're going to continue to have these conversations, stand up strong, and tomorrow there's going to be a big show of support for farms and farmers.
oh, fantastic. Jason, when people want to see more of you and the content that you produce, where do they do that? How do they do that?
They can watch our daily show. So we have a daily morning show, Monday to Friday, 7 a.m. Mountain, 9 a.m. Eastern. It's my wife and I. We do what we call Tea and Coffee with Paula and Jay, where we cover the news of the day and we bring a guest in to have conversations, sometimes multiple guests. We also do several interviews. I went across the country collecting interviews. I collected one from you, Leighton, that I'll
Yeah,
be
it was great
posting
having
about.
you and your lovely boys and your wife to Cold Lake. That was great. When's that interview coming out, by the way?
It should be out before Christmas,
Oh,
so I
great.
got a few more to get out before then, but that's on Alberta self-determination as I'm talking to various conversation or people with the conversation about this. And then we do special episodes like tomorrow morning at 11:30 a.m. Mountain, 1:30 a.m. or p.m. Eastern. Justice Minister Mickey Amory will be on and we'll be
Oh,
talking about
fantastic.
Bill 9, along with many
Yeah.
members of the communities that this affects, including the trans community, the gay community, the D-trans community, and the child advocacy community. So we'll be doing
Mhm.
episodes like that, and you can find that on thelevingneshow.com. We're on X, Rumble, YouTube, Facebook, and you can make sure that you tune in for those because we do them daily, and sometimes we do specials like tomorrow as well.
Great, great, thanks. So, Chris, what about you? Your mission is to support truth on the ground. That's obviously what you were doing here. What are your final thoughts on this discussion?
I mean, that's a heavy question. I guess there's a lot more story to tell here. Tomorrow we're going out to do the slow roll into Kelowna, I believe. I'll be going with the Sergeant Mike Rood, and we'll take Kitty with us, make sure everything's okay. I'm just going to keep doing this. I'm learning. I'm getting my feet under me, but I think I've carved out a little bit of a niche here. There's people paying attention to what we're doing, and I'm just going to keep at it, man. If people want to support me, follow me on X at Chris Dacey. DaceyMedia.com is now live. There's ways to support me there, and I'm just going to keep trying to learn and figure this out, man. But my mission is far from over.
Yeah. Well, God bless you for the courage that you've shown in covering this story and bringing it. I mean, if you had not been there, what a loss that would have been to everyone. I mean, the awareness that you brought to this is just tremendous. So God bless you for doing that. And thank you so much for taking the time to sit
It
down
really
with
is
us
God's
tonight.
will.
Oh,
God sent me
absolutely.
here, you know.
Absolutely. And he has a purpose for all this that
Yeah.
is beyond our understanding. We've got to have faith in that,
Exactly.
don't we? Yeah.
And that's what keeps me going. So
Yeah.
thank
Yeah.
you so much. I appreciate this. I appreciate the chance to talk. And it's
Oh, it's
hard
our
for me to
pleasure.
tell the broader story, but
Yeah.
this is very helpful. So
Yeah.
thank
No,
you
it's
all.
great. It's great. And we're very grateful for your time. You took the time to come on with Jason to talk about this because
It's been a tough day
unfortunately,
here too. So
yeah,
yeah.
unfortunately, we need
Yeah.
people like you to tell the truth because we know that the mass media simply will not do that, right? So anyway, Michael, I'm going to throw it over to you, and maybe you could tell people, remind people again how they can support the podcast if they like this content. And I hope that people found this conversation meaningful. I know I learned a great deal. I always do from talking to people like Chris and Jason, and I appreciate them so much for what they bring, which is truth in media, and which it's so rare, it's so precious, and we have to keep doing it. We have to keep bringing it to people, and I know that we've been able to do that tonight. So I'm very grateful that we've had this conversation. But I'll turn it over to you. Maybe you can tell people how they can support people like Chris and Jason and myself. And also, if you wouldn't mind just leading us in a closing prayer, as you always do on these shows.
Boy, I tell you, this is like an emotional, moving conversation. I feel like we need a debrief after this, but so much going on, and it causes we need eyes to see and ears to hear. We need that spiritual discernment, and there's so much manipulation just in the conversation that we were having.
And we know who's
today.
doing that, don't we?
Yes.
Michael?
Yeah. The father of lies, right? Yeah. And it is really a battle against principalities and powers. And there's a lot of pawns on the board. And so as hats off to you guys, Chris and Jason, for the work that you guys have done, and others too. And pass along, please, Chris, a special thanks to the sergeant for his work and his endeavors, and
his service never ends.
Yes, there's an oath, right? The service doesn't end. The service does not end. And so our hats off to people like that. My wife and I were actually just having lunch at the Legion in our town today. And boy, to see the names on the walls of those that did not return. And there's not the modern names on from Afghanistan, from Iraq, over the last 20 years, where Canadians have been in harm's way. So, but a very moving conversation. Thank you, gentlemen, for being here, and thanks to our audience too, and to our audience. I know there's a lot of you listening. There's some of you that may not be familiar with the Gray Matter podcast. Someone that may have sent this link over to you. I would highly recommend that you go to Amazon.ca and look for the Lies, Laws, and Liberties book that Leighton has put out. And both Leighton and Jason are nodding, because this is a very good book. And it is something that needs to be given to the younger generation. And speaking of the younger generation, you know, different platforms have different demographics. And I got to say, one of the things when you help support Gray Matter on our YouTube channel, our biggest group is that 18 to into the 40s, the 20 plus years of males, mainly males. 70% of Leighton's audience on YouTube is males. And of that number, a large portion is 18 to 44. So there is hope for this nation. Can it turn on a dime? God only knows. But as we have our hearts and our minds turned towards the things of light and love and God and our fellow humans, you know, we're being manipulated. We're seeing these atrocities. We're hearing of property rights evaporating because of a bureaucrat. And that there's only one solution to that, and it's a spiritual mindset of life that comes through Jesus Christ. And so I said my thank yous, and and definitely, please, ladies and gentlemen, connect with Gray Matter for some really principled conversations, just like you get from Chris and just like you get from Jason. And Jason, thanks to your wife too for her words of wisdom. So, Lord, we come before you. We know that those that founded Canada took the time, effort, and treasure to carve words of life from the scriptures into the buildings we have on Parliament Hill. And what's even more important, Lord, is that those words are written on our hearts as well. And so we pray that for the people who are watching, for the people of this nation, that the words of life and love of Jesus Christ and the Holy Scriptures found in the Bible would be written on our hearts, and that Canadians would have a new mind, not a mind of human flesh, but of a renewed mind through Jesus Christ and through the words of the gospel of life and love and liberty. And we pray for that to be the guiding light for our politicians and for the people and the bureaucrats, Lord, that they would experience the fear and the love and peace of God in their hearts and minds through Christ Jesus. That's the only hope for this nation. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen. Thanks, Michael. I want to thank everybody for being part of this, especially our guests. Hope that everybody found this conversation meaningful and they learned something. I want to mention one other thing I neglected to mention. That's Jason Lavigne has published his own book.
Yes.
It's excellent. It's called Bearing Witness, The Ethical, Legal, and Practical Guide to Recording and Sharing History. And this is what he does every day. And so thank God for him and the work that he's doing. And Chris, you know, you haven't written a book, but you certainly have enough great content.
I'm not great at writing. I might need a ghostwriter or something. If anyone wants to get involved,
Yeah,
man, I
well,
have tons of stuff that has not been shared, man. I got one
Yeah.
hell of a story to tell that I can't really tell myself. So, if
Well,
someone wants to help, I'm open to it.
Yeah,
Hit me
well,
up.
you maybe talk to Jason because he writes very well.
Yeah.
Maybe you guys can collaborate, put something together. But I want to thank you guys
Amazing.
so much for being with us here tonight, and to everyone who took time out on your Friday night. And if you're seeing this and you've enjoyed it, please share it. And I want to thank everyone for being with us tonight on the Gray Matter live stream. God bless you and good night.